everyone. Welcome to the Power Platform Show. Today I have David Kohar on this episode with me. He's been on before. I'll touch on the episode he's been in the past, but I really wanted to have a chat with him about his Ascentium days, which is at the very early time of Microsoft Biz Apps really starting out with their CRM products, and of course they had their ERP products in play at that time as well. But yeah, we uncover kind of what happened back then, but also where is the future, what's happening this year in 2020 and beyond. And really, as someone been 20 years in this space, here's some interesting insights that we get to share. But before we get started, I just want to talk about MapTasker, an ISV that I've been working with. I like the innovative way their solution allows businesses to bring Esri ArcGIS data into Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. When I was a consultant, I often worked with organizations that would have large Esri ArcGIS environments and always wanted a quick and easy way to be able to combine this rich geospatial data with Dynamics. We'd often find it difficult and complex trying to find the ways to combine that data. MapTasker, on the other hand, makes it easy. As the only current off-the-shelf solution available today that combines Esri data with Dynamics, MapTasker fills a gap many organizations have been looking for. If your organization is using Esri and Dynamics, or you're working with a client that has Esri or Dynamics and would like to know how you can easily bring these two sources of data together, then give the team at MapTasker a shout. Email them on hello@maptasker.com and arrange a demo today. Now, let's get on with the show. Remember, full show notes can be found at nz365guy.com/174. David, welcome to the show.
Mark, thanks again for having me.
Well, episode 46 was the last time that you were on the show with me. And just to give our listeners an idea of how long ago that was, this is episode 174. So it was a good long while ago.
It was. Wow. I'm going to have to make sure I'm hitting every 130 episodes.
We discussed the Dynamics business practice at the time and kind of like your history of building multiple practices. But today we want to kind of look at, I suppose, the early days. I didn't realize that you had at that time such a founding role in Microsoft business applications, back then called Microsoft CRM. And so it'd be good to kind of uncover that. And then, so that'll be our trip down memory lane, a bit of history. But then let's get into looking what the modern partner is based on what you're observing. What does 2020 look like, and the opportunity, how Microsoft is evolving so incredibly rapidly. And of course, it's really causing partners to need to evolve as well as part of that. So how does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds like a great agenda.
So before we get underway, just for listeners that might not have come across you or heard of you or know where you come from, what part of the world do you hail from? And kind of what's your Jedi mind trick skills and stuff that you have in this Microsoft Business Apps ecosystem?
Excellent. So currently we reside here in Woodinville, Washington, just outside of Redmond, where most people will, of course, know where the Microsoft mothership is. But and you probably might tell eventually from my accent, I'm Canadian. And so I was born and raised back east and ultimately traveled and made my way out to the West Coast and worked for actually a CRM software company up in Vancouver, Canada, and got transferred down to the Seattle area. And that was like the year 2000. So literally 20 years ago. And pretty much have been in the Washington area ever since. So that's the geography answer. And my Jedi tricks, I don't know. I'm gonna have to come back to that one. You're gonna have to give me a little time to think through my I guess it's been more my longevity than anything.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. So 2019 is behind us. We've seen the rise of the Power Platform. We've seen more applications added to the Biz App suite of products than we've ever seen in our history of, being in this ecosystem. What were your big takeaways for last year?
Yeah, I think that's one of the big ones is that, now the portfolio, I believe, is in the 29 or 30 range. And that is, that's a real proliferation from where we were back, even 3, 4, 5 years ago. So I think there's been some really interesting headway by the product teams on a number of fronts. I think on this whole really concept of moving from being very focused on the system of engagement. And I know we even jokingly hear the sort of the system of oppression comments that get made once in a while, to this more of a, how do we thinking through this, the solution and the more the insights around the solution itself. And that's really, of course, been a big, I think, turning point in 2019, and I think is going to be the North Star for 2020.
Yeah. Interesting. So, one of the reasons for setting up the show is that Aaron Elder was on some episodes ago, and you say you moved, or you got into the space around 2000, particularly moving into the US. Tell us, what were those initial companies that you were involved in? Because I got involved in 2003, which was CRM 1.2, and CRM 1 it was at the end of that 2003. At the start of that year, CRM 1 had come out. Tell us a bit about what was happening in your world around that period, and what were the companies you were working for?
Yeah. Mark, when we started our first partner business, it was late 2002. So it was technically before 1.0 launched, because it launched on January 2003. So we were coming in at the beta 1.0 period. We had a couple of beta customers to get things kicked off. And frankly, our team got assembled from a former company that I was with, that it was really going through a difficult time in that era of late 2002. Of course, the economy was shrinking,
exactly,
and CRM was getting cut off.
All the dot-com stuff was happening, right? All was falling over.
Yes, and so the interesting thing was, we saw a real opportunity with Microsoft coming out with their solution to take this group of people that really already knew CRM and the concepts of CRM and apply them really to what Microsoft was now coming to the market with. So we built up a company pretty quickly, and for the first year or so, really focused on not just getting people successful with CRM 1.0, but it was really around, how do you navigate this very early stage solution that's in the market that had a lot of promise, but certainly there was functional areas that were, I'll call it, safe to go in and really work with a customer to implement. And then as you got further out on the edges, you wanted to be very careful with what you were doing. So those early days were really interesting ones for sure. We had some, we still ended up with some successful customers that we had, and it really became the foundation for really getting into the Microsoft ecosystem. So that led to 1.2 releasing, and then around middle of 2004, I joined a company at the time called Ascentium, and we didn't have a CRM practice, so I started the practice there and joined. The team really sort of grew, and we, around 2007, about 3 years into it, we made a decision to acquire a firm called Invoke Systems. And that's where I met Jason Hunt and Aaron Elder and a few others that were the founding partners of Invoke, Mark and Michael, that when the four of them had started their Microsoft CRM practice, they actually had a very deep root back into the product team. So in fact, Aaron and Jason, I think, as you well know, and I'm sure Aaron talked a bit about that, they had actually been on the original product team. So fast forward, we brought the Invoke Systems team on board, and then we ended up about doubling the size of the team from 2007 through 2010. And then ultimately our CRM division at Ascentium was sold off to Avanade, which they sort of took off from 2010 onwards. So that was a little bit of background there. It was a great opportunity to work with some fantastic people, Aaron being one of my absolute favorite people to have worked with. Back then, we went through some pretty big projects, and it was still, as you well know, because you were deep into it at that point as well, that it was still a little bit of early days on the product. But Mark, I'd be curious to get your feedback on this as well. But one of the things I think was really interesting about that time was that there was the mindset from people like Aaron and Jason and others that this solution actually was a really good low code, no code business application platform. And that's how we talked about it a lot of times internally and to our customers. And in fact, we had done a fair bit of work with government agencies and non-traditional CRM companies with the solution itself. And as you know, there was still at that time, at least inside of Microsoft, there was some competing products really to being ordained the business application platform from Microsoft. And so it never did get the full legs that it deserved back then. I know XRM had some legs for a while, but it really, just got pulled down, I thought, from what that promise could have been. So Power Apps in 2019 and 2020 could have been 10 years into the making by this point. So great sort of things that happened back there for sure.
So you mentioned XRM. Why do you think, right? Microsoft came out at around that time with a very strong XRM story, and then there was a bit of leadership change. And I'm not saying that was it in totality, but all of a sudden, Microsoft internally seemed to want to distance themselves from this term XRM. There was kind of a feeling that no, we just produce apps like sales, customer service, etc., or CRM as it was then. We don't produce a platform. And part of my understanding at the time was there was a bit of upset around, we have Visual Studio as our software development platform. We have SharePoint as a development platform. We don't need another one, right? We don't need XRM. We don't need another one. It was internal compete. What are your thoughts around why was this on again, off again type thing happening with that XRM story to, now history being played out? Of course, the entire Power Platform is it's not XRM, it's definitely the next iterations of it, but it's definitely, you can see its foundations in the concept of XRM.
Oh, of course, yes. I think frankly, Mark, it just comes back to those days, and ultimately there was executive decisions being made at Microsoft in terms of, like you said, is it SharePoint is the business application platform of the future? Is it CRM that's the business application platform of the future? Is it more this development platform that's where we want to be our spearhead? And I just think in the end that the CRM team did not win the day in that particular meeting, as if not knowing that there was a meeting, but you can just sort of look at it from that historical standpoint and say there was definitely a shift, and a fairly swift one, to move away from this being just a low code platform to one that's more focused, like you said, on discrete business process capabilities like sales process, like customer service and whatnot. So
yeah. And of course, the platform we have now, which is very strong declarative development, which is what we were brought up on back in those early days, put your field where you want it, put the parameters in and, lay out your screens and whatnot. And we have that like on steroids nowadays. What's your perspective from your Ascentium days to now, which is 15 odd years, around about 16 maybe? How has the technology evolved, and what are kind of your key highlights for why it's now kind of smoking the competition in this space?
Yeah, good question. I think that the principles, a lot of them are still similar. I think that a couple of probably big things that happened, if you look back at the history of how this process has gone, I think that when James pulled together really the Power Platform being what we think of as Dynamics plus, Power BI, and sort of taking that more holistic view. And really, that was probably one of the bigger, I'll say, pivot points, where this whole concept of we need to drive a lot more insights and visualizations into this process and get away from these, forms and systems of engagement that have been our mainstay. And I think, again, the focus of things like bringing in LinkedIn and some of these other applications where you're extending really the solution in a pretty significant way and pulling in data and insights was truly, I think, one of the big changes. I think for moving forward, I think we're going to see how AI is going to play a much bigger role in all these solutions moving forward. And certainly we're past the toe dipping in stage, as we're seeing some early stage good results. But I think of that pivot point when James pulled together the collection of technologies at Microsoft. That was probably one of the biggest changes from, our earlier days in the 2010 to 2015 period.
Yeah, yeah. One final question on Ascentium. Kind of, at that time, what sticks out to you as the big highlights of that period in your career, and not just your career, but also the company you were working with and what you were seeing from Microsoft through that period with CRM?
The things that stick out to me the most actually were that we had probably 60% of our business was actually non-traditional CRM work. And so, it was actually maybe even higher than that, 70 plus percent. And we started to actually work more on balancing that with the traditional workloads of sales and marketing and customer service, in particular sales and service at the time. And if I think back to that, it was the fact that we were working with some of these large government agencies, and they were actually really embracing both Microsoft, CRM, as we were calling it at the time, and SharePoint, and pulling the two together in that structured and non-structured type of platform to do some really innovative things that we'd ultimately built some solutions around for the military in particular. So it was interesting watching these like literally 5,000 seat deals coming in the door that were for like the military or for a government agency, and it wasn't a Salesforce automation project. So I think that was one of the biggest things that stood out, is that we proved that this whole business application platform, low code concept was an enormously, valuable concept even back then. And then, I think the other big thing was, looking back at it, is that Microsoft always had Dynamics as a separate division. And I think that early stages that was really good. And then there was that moment, or period of time where I think it was probably just as difficult being a separate division and unit as it was being immersed within the actual operating units themselves, and being a much, from a field sales standpoint and execution standpoint, just a much easier play for sure. So I think there, we went through that awkward, I suppose, teenage years, thing that Microsoft went through, and I think now being over on the other side of it, and how the maturity of business applications being threaded into the core of the platform itself has been a great benefit to our customers and to Microsoft and to the partners themselves.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. You talk about the BizApps products being off to one side, and yet the stories that we've clearly heard through the previous 12 months is around, three clouds: Azure, Office 365, and Dynamics with Power Platform now. Do you see that this is just a massive emerging market, that a lot of companies are waking up to the idea that, hey, we need to move as many of our business processes into a digital medium that is repeatable, scalable, that type of thing? Or is it another, part I hear is that, Office 365 penetration is at an all-time high. Same with Azure, is capping out. Is this kind of the big new greenfields opportunity, as in your mind, the Power Platform, even though we're saying it from, being in it for, as you say, 20 odd years in your case? Is it still really like the breakthrough opportunity for either new partner type organizations, or, consultants that are going to start going out on their own as they start, spotting the opportunity for themselves? I mean, just saw Jukka, an MVP up in Finland this week, announce, and, he's been partner side for, actually it might have been customer side for ages. And, he's starting a brand new business, new
Yep.
practice just dedicated to the Power Platform. And I think that, I was saying it a bit last year, I think we're going to see more and more senior consultants go, you know what, I think there's an opportunity to start a new type of practice, a modern type of practice. So going back to those three clouds, are we seeing this from Microsoft because it's such a massive opportunity ahead to even convert a lot of those Office 365 / Azure customers over to the platform?
I think it is a big opportunity. I know that right now there is a significant emphasis on Power Apps and just the popularity of the whole platform concept, and and everything from the citizen developer to really these large organizations that are saying we've got a ton of, I'll even say not even necessarily simple business processes, but business processes that we would just rather not build into our big ERP system or our big, front office system. And so I just see there being a significant opportunity there. I think that's even, a discrete and positive opportunity in and of itself. I think what Microsoft has done is to really promote this concept of three cloud and the R&D that they're doing to make those solutions work well together. I just think more and more organizations are seeing the thing that we would expect to see, which is that you start to look at any individual solution out there, Salesforce, is Sales Cloud versus Microsoft's Dynamics 365, sales. And what you're seeing is, of course, that Microsoft has so significantly caught up that you get to this parity game. And now we're now in that, each one of them can bring out the next thing that makes them a little bit better in this area, and then it gets masked by something else. So I think that whole concept of looking at some of these solutions in isolation are on any given quarter, one's better, one might be a little bit better than the other one based on how you're trying to do the evaluation. But I think when you start looking at it and saying the fact is that we don't need just our salespeople to do these 5 things, we actually need them to be collaborating across this entire group. And when we start looking at it more and more broadly in terms of our business needs and not just looking at a discrete business process, that's when I think the organizations are, providing Microsoft such a huge opportunity, because Microsoft is saying we're building out the 3 cloud structure that works well together, and it covers this larger swath of business processes that just, make it easier for you to go and implement. And I think I think the smart money for a lot of these organizations is for them to, turn to a company like Microsoft and say, you do the R&D on making all the stuff work together, and we'll take it the last mile and make it specific for our business. And I think we're seeing that pay off.
I like it. Okay, let's do a bit of crystal balling and looking to the future. If we're sitting here and it's 2021, the kickoff Q1 2021, and you look back at the year that's just been, what do you see? What do you think your observations? What's this year going to be known for in your mind?
3 things. Power Apps will have a significant breakthrough in penetration into organizations. I think it will get far enough along where people will both recognize the value of having this business application platform, this low-code solution, and the ones that get far enough along will also realize the perils of having these solutions so easily be spun up by individual, we'll call them citizen developers or individual organizations. So I think quickly people will say we need to build structure and governance and programs around this so that we are running these things smoothly and we're not turning our systems into the Wild West. So I think we're going to see that be a huge theme this year. I think the second thing is that we'll start to see the turning of the tide of people focusing on the system of engagement to people really leveraging that concept of that system of insight and being a much more data-driven business as we go. I think we've got so many great examples of it. I think this year will more and more be that year where you'll stop asking these lofty questions about your business that people just sort of sit around and hypothesize, and they'll go back and just say, let's go. What's the data telling us? I think this will be the year that people will ask that more. And then the third one, and is sort of coupled with the second one, frankly, is I do think that we're going to see the AI projects starting to turn really, I'll say, a valuable return on investment. I think we've been tracking this closely because we're doing a fair bit of this work ourselves with our customers. And frankly, Mark, if you go back and start doing research and you look up, like I was using this very specific search criteria of, artificial intelligence for sales. And I started looking back on it. And if you go back to 2015, 2016, 2017, it's all around the super hyped, excited, this is going to be the thing. It's all going to be great. And then you get into, 18, 19, and you start sort of seeing that little bit of trough of despair of people saying, oh, it's not actually working out, and people are tricking the data and they're putting in the wrong results to make this thing not work. And you're starting to see a lot more of that kind of fodder. And now I think this year will be the year of how do we make AI initiatives really work with if we're doing with the sales organization, for example, work with the sales organization and not to replace the sales organization or not to do these sort of very lofty future things. It's more of we need to build out this project and this process that makes that team over there 25% more effective than they were last year. And so I think that'll be the year of AI becomes a pragmatic and then a much better applied and implemented concept.
Yeah. So if I got that right, we're going to see three things: penetration in companies where we're going to see the platform really come to the fore, and a lot of business processes get migrated to the platform, and a governance layer robustly put around that. We're going to see systems of engagement really becoming systems of insight and really data driven. So, which has been a concept that many companies have wanted for years, this idea that we make decisions on data, not just on I feel. And then the last one, the AI projects, right? Value and return on investments of AI. And yeah, I think I totally agree. I think we're going to see a lot more creativity around the use of AI. I think, last year launched a massive, positive way for people with no AI skills to get going. And I think this year, I agree, we'll see an extension of that. What does that mean from the way you look at a practice and the way in looking within your company now? Have you changed who you're hiring as consultants? Have you changed how you're going to market in any way?
Yes and yes. I would say that on the way we go to market, let's start with that one first. We have just recognized that we have got to lead the way in how we both market to, work with, and even solution with customers around this, this very much this data-driven mindset. So we tend to use and get people thinking in this concept of what's your data IQ and how are you improving the way that you're thinking about leveraging your data to actually inform you to make those next best steps, and that they're driven off of some evidence. And then I think there's been two things. One, from a hiring standpoint, I'd say that what's nice about the fact that Power Apps is going to have such an explosive year is that we do already have this built-in skill set from our teams that have been doing Dynamics, 365 and or prior to that. But we've got the built-in skill set to go and build out continue to build out our Power Apps practices. I think frankly on the new hiring side that we're seeing the most of is really around people with data and data science, analyst type backgrounds. And that's where the big demand is going to be here for 2020.
What advice would you give to consultants, so people in our businesses that are filling the different roles and looking at where they should spend their time in upskilling in this coming year? And I know there'll be unique nuances for different roles, etc. But if we could use a broad stroke, what would your recommendation be?
Yeah, I'd say go back to where the three big things are going to be. Power Apps is going to explode, and people are going to both want to build more of them, but frankly, understand how to build the governance and programs around making that actually work holistically. You're going to see a lot more insights-led initiatives, and then finally AI starts to really land some good ROI. And I think, frankly, for any consultant, any person, and the way we talk about internally for our teams is continue to research and educate yourself and get exposed to those three core areas. It's super interesting to continue to see what Microsoft does on the system of engagement side, because they come up with some nice business process capabilities, and keep yourself up to date on that. But lean into the insight side of this business, because that's where it's going to go.
Nice, I like it. Okay, One last thought around future, 5 to 10 years out. I know that's a big looking range. Where do you reckon we'll be?
5 to 10 years out.
So 2030.
Yeah, exactly. In 2030, I reckon I'll be retired. I'll start with that.
Same here.
I think that we will be sitting on the sidelines, Mark, fascinated by the way in which the technology has evolved so much. Thinking about things around how voice and how AI and whatnot will impact these solutions way more than they have in the past. I think that the one thing that we'll always come back to is the thing that we've seen pivot and then over pivot against is that people get so fascinated by the technology and they lose sight of what what the business metrics, what the business imperative actually is that you're trying to achieve. And so I bet we'll see a little bit of the technology enamorment take over for a bit, and then we'll come back to the reality of, well, we're still trying to, as an organization, trying to do a more effective job of how we sell and market to our customers. So how is the technology being applied in that way? But I think 10 years from now, the only thing I can guarantee is that what probably will be the most innovative and effective social media outlet, what might be the most effective way of doing marketing and sales, may not have even been invented yet. So I know that's the one thing, and you look back to even 10 years ago and knowing that everything is going much faster. Just think about the fact that we were 10 years ago, we were really in the infancy of a lot of the social media capabilities, and look where we are today.
Yeah, valid.
As an example, so.
Okay, let's think about Microsoft for a moment. They've changed a lot in the last 20 years, specifically in the Microsoft business application space. What have you seen, if you like, their key pivots, and what are your thoughts on their goals around 2020? I had Hayden Stafford on recently. He's got around $500 million to spend in 2020 on sales, go to market for biz apps, and that's on I think in 2019 he had around 60 to 80 million. So that's a massive uptick, right, in investment and growth of the channel. What are your thoughts on Microsoft and how they're going to market in this space?
Yeah, and we're witnessing it here, firsthand. I think that Microsoft is making a very bold statement, and they're making a very bold approach to this marketplace in the next 12, to 18 months in terms of the hires that they're doing, and they're going to have a significant, higher number of people that are, feet on the street, focused on customers, focused on what they're trying to achieve, and it's going to drive a significant more level of interaction and as it's going to drive a significant higher number of volume of opportunities and different, just a different scale than what they've had to date. So as a partner, of course, we have to be mindful of how does that impact us, especially in our case, eLogic is a very focused organization on the biz apps and analytics and IoT space, and so we just focus on manufacturing customers. So we're seeing that investment though being put into the field, and it's going to impact getting in front of more manufacturing customers. And so we need to continue to scale right along with Microsoft to make sure that we're able to be there side by side with them to provide the most effective really the interactions then with those manufacturing customers. So in the end, we are ecstatic about the investment they're making. That investment, we're starting to see some of the exposure to it as those people are being hired on and onboarded and actually working on some opportunities and shadowing deals. So we're seeing already some of that investment landing in the field, and we expect that probably by July, August, September, like Q1 of their 2021 year is when we're going to start to probably see some of the revenue and some of the impact that it actually has.
Yeah, so true. What do you think is the biggest value and opportunity of being a Microsoft partner?
Well, and I think the value prop that's probably one thing that stayed fairly steady here, at least over my my 18 years in the channel, and that is that Microsoft will continue to stay true to having a very, very focused partner ecosystem. They are very, have always been a very partner-friendly organization and continue to scale and grow through partners. And so I don't see that. I don't see that mindset ever. Well, maybe at least we've never seen it change, and it continues to work well for Microsoft. It continues to work great for us. So they've always been a very partner friendly organization and good one to work with. So I don't see that part changing.
Yeah. Recently, Satya came out. I heard him, talk up Steve Ballmer around. It was Steve Ballmer's idea to get into the cloud and Azure and things like that. And once again, blows me away at such as, humility in, not taking credit, because a lot of people credit, of course, Microsoft's massive rise in the last period of time since Satya has been CEO of the organization to what he's done. But he was standing on the shoulders of people before him. And I'm always impressed when someone now that probably doesn't need to shout out the successes of the previous people do. What are your thoughts on Satya?
I think that it was a tremendous change in leadership. I think that the timing was right. I think the Bill and Steve leadership approach and everything, I think obviously served the company well for many, many years. I think this was the right timing to make this shift. And it just, I have to say that frankly, just the level of empathy, I think the ability to work with the Microsoft field has even gotten that much better as Satya has come on board. And I just think the culture continues to become, even stronger. And so, that concept of partner friendly has always been there. I think the way that people work and the way that they interact, the way that they are showing empathy for customers and for each other, I think is actually, paying off. And I think it allows for change to happen a little bit more easily. I think that's where, you get into some of these environments. And if you do want to have this massive amount of change, sometimes the fact is that that it's not going to be easy and it's not going to be smooth, and there's going to be a lot of bumps in the road. So if you've got a more open and accepting, environment to allow those people to go out more on a limb, to take more risks, to know that they're not going to get thrown off the bus for making a mistake, that I think that's what we're seeing as far as a couple of grand things. One is just the amount of change that they've been able to drive through the organization, and the amount of collaboration that happens within that organization, which, back to your whole earlier point of, you can't have three clouds that don't work together. And that could have been quite possible, if you continued to have the silos that you would have had in the past.
Yeah, exactly. So three other names I just want to give you: Alyssa Taylor, Hayden Stafford, and James Phillips. These three have been working together and make up the senior leadership of the BizApps ecosystem. In the past, previous to them, we've not seen all leadership work so well together. They seem to have an amazing working relationship that's enabled this massive rise and success that Dynamics BizApps, a Power Platform, has received. What are your thoughts on these three individuals?
Well, I think they've done a really nice job of taking this business to that next level. I think from start with R&D and product. I think we've, again, for the amount of innovation we've seen, the amount of really structure and organization that we have come to expect from James and his team has been outstanding. I think Hayden and Alyssa, more on the sales and go-to-market side, have really expanded the way that really the world looks at business applications from Microsoft. And so I think we are getting past one of probably our biggest challenges for the first number of years, was that people didn't really know that Microsoft was in the game for business applications, right? Remember those days of when you would be in these discussions and people would literally say, I didn't even know Microsoft had a CRM solution. And you're thinking, wow, we've been at this for whatever, 10, 12 years. I mean, is it because literally this person just has not looked on the internet, or is it because that's just been the best kept secret? And I think Hayden and Alyssa and their teams, of course, have have broken through on that and really ensured that whenever people are evaluating these business application platforms in a lot of ways, that Microsoft is almost always considered one of the 1, 2, 3 top contenders. So that's been huge.
Yeah. If you're a consultant to Microsoft partners in this ecosystem that we operate in, what's 3 key bits of advice you would give them that they next need to execute on correctly to be successful as Microsoft BizApp partners?
If we're talking about the individual consultants themselves, again,
I'm talking about the companies, more the companies.
Oh, the companies. Yeah. The things, I guess, that are you're going to, again, be critical of is, I'll come back to my top 3 for 2020 in a lot of ways, but you look for what is the market doing? What is Microsoft doing to move the market? So in some cases, Microsoft can move the market. In other cases, you're looking for those market trends. And I think that those are the 3 that I see being undeniable for 2020. And so as an organization, how are you getting as a consulting partner, how are you getting your arms around delivering Power Apps to your customers? How are you leading with insights and being able to be really the consultant or the company that can help your customers become more data-driven in how they run their businesses? And then third is, how are you getting past sort of the hype of AI and actually getting AI projects implemented with your customers in a way that's actually getting them true ROI and value? And so I think those are maybe my 3 key takeaways.
I like it. Okay, let's switch to some quickfire questions before we wrap up. Are you ready to face the random questions?
Come on, yes.
Okay, here it is. What's the biggest purchase you've ever made?
A house.
Cool. If you could instantly be an expert in one subject, what would it be?
Wine.
Nice, I like that. Describe your worst date ever. You might have to go back in time for that one.
Oh my gosh, my worst date ever. I'll go back way in time. I guess it was having to go on a date that was a hiking date, and my date actually about a quarter of the way through the hike couldn't make it any longer.
Wow.
So actually maybe that didn't turn out to be the worst thing that could happen, but that's the one that pops up in memory. How's that?
Yeah, that's good. What is a mistake people often make about you?
What is a mistake people often make about me?
Yeah.
Or maybe a misconception? Is that your...
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay.
Misconception's good.
I would say that people sometimes don't realize my intensity because I have a pretty laid back personality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is interesting. It's like the still waters run deep type thing. Mm-hmm. What's one thing you did that you wish you could go back and undo? That's a bit deep, isn't it?
Yeah, there we go. I wish that I could go back and have made more investment in Microsoft's stock in 2015.
Wouldn't we all, right? Oh, so true, so true. Final question for you is, would you rather explore space or the ocean?
Oh, ocean.
Wow, okay. No ambitions for Mars then?
None yet. I'm going to let Bezos and company sort that out, and then I'll just be a participant.
Elon will get there first, I reckon, if anyone's going to do it. But I haven't watched too much what Bezos is doing in his space endeavors. David, it's been great to have you on the show. Before you go, if people want to kind of follow what you do in the digital arena, what you've got online, how can they do that?
Absolutely. Best place to hit me up online is on LinkedIn. So David Kohar, Kohar. I am the only David Kohar on LinkedIn. So you should be able to easily follow me there. And that's where I like to place most of my social media attention. So that's where my thoughts and opinions all go.
Hey, thanks for listening and joining us on the Power Platform Show. Full show notes for this episode can be found at nz365guy.com/174. I'm your host, Business Applications MVP, Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. If you'd love to give me some feedback, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn Messenger is the best way to get hold of me. Otherwise, bye for now.